partners from around the world. I'm Elizabeth Lule. I'm Executive Director of the Early Childhood Development Action Network, otherwise known as ECDAN. We're a global network of over 350 partners from all over the world, including our sister partner, the regional ECD networks, and a warm welcome to the Africa Early Childhood Network. We catalyze collective action for greater impact. We share knowledge and learn together, and we advocate fiercely for young children and their caregivers. As many of you know, the Global Partnership for Education's Knowledge and Innovation Exchange, known as KIX, is a joint endeavor with the International Development Research Center that generates evidence on scaling education innovations and addresses knowledge and capacity gaps to strengthen education systems. With the generous support of the LEGO Foundation, GPE KIX supported applied research projects, especially on early learning. ECDAN was grateful to be a previous KIX partner. Together with UNICEF, we supported the development of the ECE Accelerator Toolkit and helped to facilitate knowledge exchange and peer learning between countries, working to strengthen early childhood education planning, including it in budgets, in education budgets, and analysis. We will share a link to the toolkit in the chat. As the important work of KIX continues, we are again delighted to use our platform so that ECD partners can learn from one another about innovation and scale-up. Today, we are joined by experts from GPE, IDRC, the LEGO Foundation, policymakers, researchers, and community leaders who will share key findings and lessons learned from projects in the Gambia, Malawi, and Uganda. At this critical point in time, it's more important than ever that we share our experiences from across countries and learn from one another. So a warm welcome to you all. Thank you for joining us. And we hope that you enjoy this important webinar and take back something valuable to your own countries and contexts. Over to you, Brett.
Thank you, Elizabeth. My name is Brett Weissel. I am the Global Policy and Advocacy Lead at ECDAN, and I'll be moderating this first part of this webinar. So we'd now like to turn to Tricia Wind, Program Leader at the Global Partnership for Education's Knowledge and Innovation Exchange at International Development Research Center, and Jill Popp, Senior Research Specialist at LEGO Foundation, for providing some opening remarks. Okay, over to you, Tricia.
Thank you so much, Brent. As Elizabeth mentioned, GPE KIX is the knowledge and innovation exchange of and for GPE partner countries. So KIX supports inter-country learning, and it supports research, where the topics are defined based on the priorities of decision makers and practitioners in today's education systems. Over the last 4 years, KIX funded 41 applied research projects, including 8 on early learning. The research that we fund is applied and engaged. And as you'll see in this webinar, it's often co-created with people in ministries of education, practitioners, and with communities. And KIX research is designed to be immediately relevant for use. So the projects incorporate both capacity strengthening and knowledge mobilization so that the evidence can be quickly moved into policy and practice. Projects start with a promising or proven innovative approach that addresses a country's priorities in early learning, and then do research on how that impact can scale. In this webinar, you're going to be hearing about a synthesis report on early learning, and particularly about 2 of the GPE KIX projects that had great impact on policy and community levels. Before I pass it over to Jill Popp of the LEGO Foundation, I would like to invite you to share and use the evidence that was generated. We'll be dropping some links in the chat. I'd also encourage you to find out about a next generation of applied research on inclusive early learning pedagogies and foundational skills for a smooth transition to primary school. And you can find more information about those also on our website. So I'm not going to take too much time. I thank you so much for joining, and thank you so much for the organizers who have put this webinar together. Jill, over to you.
Thanks, Tricia. It's so nice to see all the names coming in the chat and where people are from. So good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are to everyone, and welcome to this important discussion today. Early childhood is a critical period that lays the foundation for lifelong learning, health, and well-being. However, we know that a one-size-fits-all approach don't necessarily work. What is effective in one community may not be relevant or sustainable in another. That is why today's conversation is so essential. Contextualizing innovations ensures that interventions are not only evidence-based, but also culturally relevant, socially accepted, and economically viable within specific settings. When we tailor solutions to local realities, we respect cultural norms, address the unique challenges in the community, engage many stakeholders, optimize our resources, promote equity and inclusion, align with policy frameworks, and ensure scalability and, most important, sustainability. As we engage in today's discussions, let's explore how we can move beyond imported models and develop interventions and innovations that truly reflect and respond to the diverse realities of children, families, and communities worldwide. Thank you for joining us, and I look forward to an insightful and inspiring exchange of ideas today.
Thank you, Tricia and Jill. And just a reminder, we do have interpretation. It's available in English and Spanish. So please be sure to select the language on Zoom. And we are taking questions. So if you do have questions, please use the Q&A in Zoom, and we will take those if we have time. I would now like to introduce Elizabeth Katonga, Program Manager at the Africa Early Childhood Network. Elizabeth will present an overview of the GPE KIX synthesis report, which consolidated the findings from 8 ECE research projects from 2019 to 2024. Okay, over to you, Elizabeth.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be presenting this afternoon. And I am Elizabeth Gitonga, as introduced, from the Africa Early Childhood Network. And on the next slide, I'll just highlight that the Africa Early Childhood Network is a continental ECD network focused on ECD advocacy in the continent. AFCAN is an affiliate of Early Childhood Development Action Network, ECDAN. And AFCAN was selected by GPE KIX to synthesize emerging evidence from GPE KIX research projects that ran from 2019 to 2024 that seek to strengthen learning in the early years. Slide 3. So if we look at that map, it kind of shows the countries involved in this synthesis. In 2019, early learning was identified as a priority for GPE partner countries, as many children still cannot access ECE, and there is a high percentage of learning poverty that still prevails. The partner countries highlighted the need for a strong knowledge base on what works to achieve quality ECE. These partner countries also mentioned the need for innovations in ECE that had strong potential for scale-up, institutionalization, and sustainability. Based on this demand, 8 research projects were implemented by 20 Southern-based organizations. This was from 2020 to 2024 across 19 low and middle-income countries, mainly in Africa. As depicted there, some countries in Africa and some in the Asian continent. Slide 4. The synthesis of findings draws from our review of published literature and project documents and analysis of focus group discussions. So in this research, we explored the results under 5 themes. 1, play-based pedagogy and school readiness. 2, teacher training, support, and professional development. 3, gender equality, equity, and inclusion as cross-cutting issues in ECE. Then we had scaling and ensuring sustainability of ECE planning, and finally, ECE partnerships and community and parental participation. Next slide, please. So as we got into the results that were gathering there, we did see that GPE KIX projects have demonstrated positive results from integrating play-based learning into pre-primary curricula in several countries. But despite its inclusion in many national education policies, effective implementation of play-based learning remains a challenge in the continents. And so what did we learn from this? I'll highlight three lessons learned under play-based pedagogy, context-based innovations and strategies such as training teachers in play-based pedagogy and using older children as facilitators have proven effective in reinforcing play-based learning approaches and addressing gaps in teaching methodologies. Capacity building for policymakers, parents, and teachers, and the creation of locally relevant, culturally appropriate, play-based materials are key drivers of successful implementation. We also learned that success in scaling play-based learning relies not only on policy frameworks, but also on active community and parental involvement. You will learn in the next panel on how the child-to-child approach integrates play-based pedagogy and increases school readiness, which was one of the studies that was looked at, one of the projects that was looked at. Next slide. Under teacher training and professional development, we can highlight that GPE KIX projects focused on developing and testing innovative teacher training strategies, including peer-to-peer learning and communities of practice to supplement the training of trainers model. And evaluating the work that was done, lessons learned, firstly, was that regular teacher mentorship and continuous professional development are necessary to ensure long-term success of play-based pedagogy. Teachers greatly benefit from peer-to-peer learning and participation in communities of practice. Thirdly, we also learned that monitoring and evaluating the implementation of play-based EC curriculum will lead to continuous progress. And in the second panel, in this webinar, you will learn more on different approaches that were successful for teacher professional development, as the panelists will zoom in on that. Under the theme of gender equity and social inclusion, it was highlighted that GPE KIX projects emphasized breaking down gender stereotypes and promoting inclusive practices that benefit marginalized children, particularly those with disabilities. What we learned is that engaging fathers and addressing stigma around disability are critical for ensuring inclusive ECD environments. We also see from under this theme that teaching and learning materials should be created to be gender responsive and inclusive. And thirdly, a lesson on reaching underprivileged children and the effectiveness of the provision of targeted quality programs was an effective way to reach the underprivileged children. Next slide, please. Under the theme of scaling and sustaining ECE, and we are highlighting the main lessons. Obviously, there were other lessons learned, but GPE KIX projects have successfully scaled community-based and home-based ECE models by building strong partnerships with local stakeholders and leveraging open source digital tools. So what did we learn from this? Firstly, it is important to secure political support from the very onset of the program. Secondly, it is also important to ensure strong community partnerships and engagement with civil society. And thirdly, that ECED initiatives should be contextualized, for example, in the use of indigenous resources to support learning. Next slide, please. And under community and parental involvement, We see that the projects engaged local communities through workshops, participatory research, and awareness campaigns, drawing 4 lessons or 3 lessons that I will highlight. Active community engagement and parental involvement are essential for the success of early learning programs. Encouraging parental participation, particularly in rural and disadvantaged areas, has been identified as a key factor in sustaining early learning initiatives. And thirdly, targeted capacity building for parents on play-based approaches led to improved home learning. And it was further noted that using the existing community-based structures in the communities enhanced peer-to-peer learning and support. Next slide, please. So what recommendations can we draw from this? I will just highlight 5 recommendations. The importance of integrating play into the ECE curricula that should be centered on age-appropriate play-based learning and with resources for both teachers and parents and regular monitoring and evaluation. Secondly, the need to strengthen teacher training and expand access to training programs. And this would look like continuous professional development, mentorship, hands-on training, and this should be prioritized as they help to build the teacher confidence in delivering this play-based pedagogy. Thirdly, promoting gender equality, equity, and inclusion, and these considerations should be mainstreamed into all ECD policies and programs, including a focus on marginalized groups like children with disabilities. And fourthly, to foster community engagement, spotlight on parents. The engagement of parents is of utmost importance, and this can be done through awareness campaigns and trainings and ensuring that everyone is well capacitated for the success of early learning programs. And finally, to ensure sustainability and scalability, ECE models should be integrated into national education sector plans, and governments should collaborate with local and international partners to ensure long-term sustainability. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for that helpful overview. I will now, I'd like to now reintroduce Jill Pop with the LEGO Foundation. She's going to moderate the first panel for you today on play-based pedagogy and school readiness.
Great.
Okay, over to you, Jill.
Great, thanks, Brett. Thank you for joining again today. So we will have our first session today going in depth into the first theme of the GPE KIX synthesis report. We'll have a presentation from one of the GPE KIX projects and then hear how these findings have been used and integrated by policymakers and community level actors. We'll have 3 short presentations followed by a Q&A, which again, you can put the Q&A into the chat. So first, I'd like to introduce Dr. Godfrey at Kiambogo, I hope I said that right, University, specializing in early childhood education. He will present the main findings of the GPE KIX project on inclusive child-to-child learning approach, scaling up inclusive play-based learning for smooth transition from pre-primary to primary school, implemented in Uganda, Ethiopia, and Malawi. Over to you.
Hello, everyone. Yes, thank you very much for having me. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Godfrey Ju. We're presenting on the play-based pedagogy and school readiness. We're giving you lessons we've learned from the inclusive child-to-child play-based learning that is scaled in pre-primary centers in Ethiopia, Malawi, and Uganda. Next slide, please. To begin with, in our communities, we still have a lot of poverty in terms of caregivers or teachers who work with the children. If centers are put there, there might be no teachers. If they're there, they could be very much busy doing a lot of things there. So we decided to use this model, the inclusive child-to-child model, which is a play-based model that we integrated in the home-based centers and also community-based centers so that they can support learning in the centers in the absence of the teachers, and sometimes even when the teachers are there to make sure that learning goes on. We implemented this project in 32 centers, 16 of them in Uganda, 8 of them in Malawi, and 8 in Ethiopia to promote learning in those places. Of course, the model we had learned from different sources where they had been implemented, and we tried to modify them. So for example, the earlier models had worked with the children, maybe from primary schools, working with children in the preschools, but we found an issue with that, and we decided to bring only the ones in the preschools to work as the facilitators for their peers in the same place so that they are nearer each other and increase contact time. Next slide, please. So in this model, what we first did was we decided to collect over 200 local games, traditional games from different communities in Uganda, in Malawi, and in Ethiopia, and put them in one book. In that one book, we're able to identify the different lessons that those games really teach children, the skills they teach. We described the games and also put an illustration or a picture of the game for those ones who can't read, that they can only just see the picture, and then they are able to know that this is the game, and eventually they can go and try to play it. And also they can modify if there's certain thing they want to modify, as needs change, they keep modifying them and so on. And so that those games are taught by fellow children within the same class or age groups, but within the same center. Other children who are from the primary school can also come in and join or lead in other games when they are free. Next slide, please. So in the book, as you can see in the picture, the book is there with that child. So he identifies a game that he feels comfortable with, and then he starts preparing his materials or her materials that they're going to use for the game. Then eventually they'll go and lead that game when they have the materials that they've made. If they cannot make some materials, they work with their own parents or their teachers or any other adult who's around to help them make the materials, or even other children who are there to make the materials. And they know that they're ready to go and play when they need to play. Next slide, please. So when the game is ready, they start playing. So like the child in brown there is the leader, leading all the others to play in that game. So here they're having a block game, and some of them are trying to make a cross, some are making structures, some are making some designs and so on. And so they teach the others who cannot do them well and help the others so that they can all play together and support each other. But of course, there's also assessment that is going to take place later. That very child will report to the teacher how the others have progressed, what they cannot do, so that there can be other supportive services later. Next slide, please. So in the model, because we are bringing the parents also on board, so we end up also supporting gender equity, equality, and inclusion. So we have been able to bring on men, a lot of men, to support in some of the games and some of the activities and to work with the children. And so they enjoy it because they feel recognized in that process. Even the children with special needs are able to come on board and also lead in the games where they have a talent, not necessarily their own specialty, but where they have a talent, they can as well be able to teach other children. And then also we cater for individual interest, that if a child is very much interested in one particular thing, then he comes up to lead it and teach the others. So he builds his confidence, his self-esteem, and then you know that he also has something to contribute. The mothers also come very actively, and also we demystify some of the games that would be maybe for only girls or only boys and so on. But because it is interesting, everybody tries to participate. And so we demystify some of those gender stereotypes within the games. Next slide, please. So as you see in the games, it can be one game, maybe it's a sand play area, but within that game, each child can decide to play a different game, but within the same setting to cater for their interest, but also they're all together in one place learning a particular skill. So if they are on social emotional learning here, then they know how to work together, share the materials, and be in one space. And find that the time they're together is well spent, as opposed to being destructive in a certain way. And some of the games are directed so that they're towards a particular goal. Next slide, please. Next slide. Okay, as you can see, sometimes some games become very interesting and others join in. So for example, the picture, there's a child with a special needs there, the child, but now is turned to lead a particular game. And so this helps them to learn and like being in school. So when the children with special needs end up coming, they're not discouraged from coming because they know they're going to participate in something. Next slide. So here, as the children play, the teacher, as you can see from the picture, the teacher watches, the teacher observes and does not interfere. The teacher's role is to observe for purpose of assessment, those who cannot do certain things so that they can help later. They can also document what they can do and what they cannot do for later discussion with the parents. The teachers also support in planning of the activities with the child, because the child who is going to lead may discuss the activity with the teacher, so they plan it together. They also help provide materials, and then to secure the place where they're going to play from. And then in case there are going to be some conflicts in the middle or about sharing materials or some quarrel that come around, the teacher can come in to act as an arbitrator to make sure that there is peace. Then they encourage participation. For those who might not want to be very engaged, the teacher might approach them to know why they're doing what they are doing so that they can encourage them to come and also play. Next slide, please. So the parents come in as well. The games become interesting, so they come in when the children are not playing as it is expected. Sometimes the parents come in to make sure that they show the children how to do it. And this especially has helped us to change that attitude of people not accepting play as an important thing that contributes to learning. So when the parents also start engaging, they also start supporting play instead of saying it's a waste of time. So they encourage participation and they also help in planning. Next slide, please. So from all those activities, we find that the child-to-child approach encourages children to enroll and stay in school, so that if you're in school, then you can be able to transit to the next level. The parents remain supportive and therefore make sure that the children remain there. The children develop leadership skills because they practice leading all the time, and that enhances their self-esteem. And the different activities that they play enhances their literacy skills, their numeracy skills, that help them when they go to primary school. They have something that they're already used to. And then when they have friends already they're playing with in the centers here, when they go to primary school, they get them and continue being friends. And therefore it helps in that transition. Next slide, please. So the lessons that we have learned, first of all, parents actually respond to play. As long as you show them that this will help your child to do this, instead of saying parents do not want children to play, but they can accept that if you tell them what it does to their children. We also know that a number of teachers still lack skills in teaching play-based learning. They talk about it, but they don't practice it. The other one is that sometimes there's confusion about local materials with the traditional materials. When you tell the people that get local materials within your place and use it for the children, they go for traditional materials that are not maybe available or very expensive. So that misunderstanding still needs to be clarified. And then assessment of learning through play without the national play guidelines can be challenging because there can be different versions of play and different ways of doing it. So having a guidelines is very, very critical to ensure that we support play-based learning. Next slide, please. So we recommend institutionalization of play pedagogy. If it can be done, it would be very, very helpful. If you can have play pedagogy guidelines to be able to make sure that all the initiatives tend to focus on particular goals that we need to maintain play-based learning. It will be very much critical. Otherwise, some do not take it as learning, take it as simply enjoyment. We also still have issues of play spaces that need to be prioritized. There are still many centers that are developed without play spaces. They think they can only have a class for academic work, but without play spaces. This still needs to be worked on. Then teachers need more training on play-based pedagogy because they still direct it instead of practicing it. Next slide, please. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Professor Godfrey. Next, I'd like to introduce Dr. Safina Mutumba, Principal Education Officer from the Ministry of Education and Sports in Uganda, who will present how the ministry has worked with the university and is using the child-to-child approach. Over to you, Dr. Safina. Dr. Safina, can you please unmute? Great.
In spite of the research, the government of Uganda recognizes the importance of play-based learning. When you look at the legal frameworks and policies that have been developed under the Ministry of Education and in the government of Uganda generally, we have the Early Childhood Care and Education Policy. It's a policy that recognizes the importance of play and also gender-related issues, including parenting, education. We have developed guidelines on the establishment of pre-primary schools, and the guidelines advocate for play spaces and also need to see children play. The early learning framework for the 3 to 6 years generally advocates for learning through play in all the areas of service delivery. Then we have the early learning and development standards for the 3 to 6. They also appreciate that children learn majorly through play at the different age group. The community mobilization manual itself mobilizes parents to play with their children, to engage them into play, although parents don't recognize it as the best approach. They prefer academic work. Then the guide on the training of center management committees. These are the management members that guide the daily routine activities at the school. Also training management committee members to advocate for play within the schools. We have the parents' book. This is a book that was developed during COVID-19 in appreciation that parents are the first teachers. It advocates for play-based learning throughout their activities in the home and also advocates for gender-related issues to mitigate gender biasness. We have also, with support from UNICEF, we have developed the basic requirements and minimum standards for pre-primary schools. They have also created a great opportunity for play spaces, both indoor and outdoor. Together with Chambogo University and National Curriculum Development Center, Professor has presented the guide for caregivers on the young facilitators, whereby they are also supported to deliver lessons through play. This is a great opportunity. Under Uganda, we have established the community of practice for all partners that support learning through play so that we can work together to ensure that we deliver related activities in spite where we are. However, much as we have recognized the importance of play-based learning, we also have contextual challenges within the country. We lack clear guidelines on play-based pedagogy, whereby they are the ones we expect to guide the teachers, but currently we have just started on the journey of developing them, an implication that they are not yet in place. When you reach our pre-primary schools, most of them lack the play spaces. They don't have the spaces to give these children an opportunity to learn through play. At the end of the day, you'll find teachers concentrating on the academic part instead of allowing these children, giving them opportunity to learn through play. The teachers themselves, they were traditionally trained. They lack the methodology on learning through play. So it's a big challenge that teachers, instead of supporting children to learn through play, they concentrate majorly on the textbooks, making these children lose that opportunity to learn on their own through play. Parents also demand for academics rather than learning through play. Most of them take learning through play to be a wastage of time. Yet with us as specialists, we believe that through play, there is a lot of literacy development, numeracy development, but parents, most especially those that don't know, they take it as a wastage of time. When it comes to the opportunities for the child-to-child approach, there are a lot of opportunities. For example, through group work, teachers struggle a lot with developing the literacy of these children, but these children can learn a lot on their own through group work. Peer-assisted learning. If they are given a variety of materials of different colors, these children can learn naming those colors, naming the objects, organizing the class, the play materials, cooking, imitating their parents through play, using the child-to-child approach. Storytelling. Some of these children are told stories from home. So when they sit by themselves, through the child-to-child approach, they can learn a lot through storytelling and role play. When it comes to songs, through songs, these children can teach themselves songs rather than waiting for the teachers, using the child-to-child approach. The nursery rhymes, it does not require a teacher to teach these children all the time. These children can learn on their own. Helping with the daily routines in the class, organizing the class, there is a lot that they can do through that, and even modeling positive behavior like sharing, taking turn. They can learn a lot on their own, even within the teacher, without the teacher. We have a number of future plans to scale up the approach since we have been working with the Chambogo University. Currently, we are reviewing our curricula for both pre-primary and primary. This is a great opportunity to integrate play-based learning methodology into the curriculum. We also expect to finalize with the national play guidelines for pre-primary, primary schools and teacher institutions. We expect also to integrate the approach into the teacher training modules. We are working on beginning to sensitize parents as per the policy. We expect to also support the parents appreciate the benefits of learning through play. Capacity building of the teachers through the CPDs, the in-service teachers. We have the national teacher policy. It has created an opportunity for that. So we expect to give that package to the teachers, then monitoring and support supervision to ensure that teachers make use of the approach to enhance children's literacy and numeracy. Then finally, we also expect to strengthen the play-based pedagogy to enhance the human capital development at the start when children are still young, so that by the time they opt to take up a profession, they have something at the back of their mind. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you so much. I think I'll move along to Ms. Alina Chibwana, who is the Executive Director from the Creative Center for Community Mobilization in Malawi, who will present how the organization has scaled the child-to-child approach in its program and at the community level.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alinafe Irene Chibwana, as you have heard. I work for CRECOM, which stands for Creative Center for Community Mobilization. And indeed, we did try to pilot the implementation of child-to-child approach. So here I am. We noted quite a number of challenges in Malawi, which are as follows. The early childhood education is not child-centered and play-based. So because of this, mostly it was purely academic. And then when we came to realize the benefits of child-to-child approach, we thought that this was an opportunity. So the project developed and provided a detailed guide to support play and learning. It also introduced the practice of child-to-child play-based learning, as to what Professor Godfrey Ju just stated. And the child-to-child pedagogy introduced also at a home-based level to continue to play and learn after school. So we made use of the young facilitators from primary schools to be with the fellow students at home-based level. And the other challenge was the inadequate play materials. So in this one, we've trained communities in the production of play materials. Next slide, please. And the other challenge is the inadequate trained caregivers or teachers, especially in rural areas. So with the coming in of child-to-child project, we trained young facilitators to guide play, and we also sensitized policymakers and program managers to adopt the approach, because we noted that it was equally important. And the other challenge which the project tried to solve is the inadequate food supply and resources and lack of friendly infrastructure. So following a leaf from child to child, we trained community based child care centers in village savings and loans methodology. And in this one, of community-based child care centers have at least over $500, which they use to procure resources and the food supply for the centers. And the chiefs were also mobilized to support the centers with the resources. Next slide. Next slide, please. So why is it that CRECOM decided to adopt and scale child-to-child intervention. First and foremost, one of CRECOM's thematic pillars is supporting the government in providing inclusive quality education. As you can see from pillars, and the inclusive quality education is the second pillar, which we are trying to work in. And this was an opportunity to implement the pilot intervention in the 4 districts that we were working already. So, as I stated, we observed positive results during the implementation of the pilot. 1, there was increased development of confidence and leadership skills among the young facilitators. Secondly, the young facilitators acted as role models and inspired other children to attend learning in the CBCCs. And also, we noted that home-based learning motivated some children who dropped out of school to come back to school. And not only that, we also observed that the home learning centers were seen as a tool to bring children with disabilities to the community-based child centers. Of the centers, we enrolled about 20 children with disabilities with home learning, which was not the case before. So the child-to-child guide also made learning easy as the children select games they wanted to engage in. So it's not the teacher directing them, but they would choose the kinds of games that they would want to play at that day, at that time. And so because of this, we have seen greater parenting abilities also, especially among men, in bringing children to learning centers and supporting the center with playing materials. As you can see, those doors, they were done by men as well as women. The men, especially those that are involved in tailoring. Next slides, I think the slides are not coming in. Yes. So those are the doors that were done by tailors who are men in the communities. So how were we involved with the GPE in the project? Next slide, please. So we were involved during the drafting of the proposal, during data collection and analysis, both at baseline and endline. And we also mobilized the chiefs to identify home learning spaces that are safe. And we also monitored the implementation of child-to-child play-based intervention. And at the same time, we were also involved in the review of the child-to-child curriculum, the training of young facilitators, as well as the training of center management committees in village savings and loans methodology for the community-based child centers to be sustainable. So this is how we are involved, and this is in implementing child-to-child pedagogy. So the other part which is very interesting, is that most of the CBCCs, the child-based care centers that we are working in, they are closer to community-based secondary schools. So those girls who dropped out of school because of teenage pregnancies, now they are able to bring their children to the care. So, and in a nutshell, this is what we have been doing. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much. I think today's conversation has really reinforced that building a sustainable, high quality early childhood system and innovative approaches requires a holistic approach, one that is child-centered, inclusive, play-based, of course, community-driven, and supported by strong policies and institutional frameworks. Thank you all for your time today. I think we have a few minutes for some questions. So if the presenters could turn on their cameras. There's a lot of questions in the Q&A that we won't get to, so I encourage you to try to answer those. Dr. Iju, I noted there were a couple of questions about the age range of the intervention, and then if any of the materials were online. So if you could maybe address that. And then a lot of people on the webinar today wanted to know about how you balance the ambition for scaling to make it relevant for other contexts. So Dr. Iju, I'll go to you first to maybe address the age range and if the materials are online.
Okay, thank you very much. Our model was addressing the age range of 3 to 6 years. But as you know, in the community centers, sometimes the children, like 4 years, come with their younger siblings, maybe 1 year, maybe 2 years, as part of the class that comes. So sometimes some games, when they're playing, even those young ones can participate in it. Also, but the age range is very, very fluid because of how the communities are. The materials, I think, can get in from the KIX website. It's there. I've also put the pack right now in the chat here. So in case if you have been seeing the chat, you can pick it from there. And then the last question was on balance between what?
How do you balance the ambition to scale with relevance for particular contexts?
First of all, we allowed modification in the context. Our material provides a framework that this is a game. So these games that are collected from the communities, they can have different names, they can have different play materials, and they can have different intentions. We allowed children to recognize the games and then play it in the way they want to play it and even modify it. So that catered for a different context, and therefore even scaling goes along that line, that the games keep evolving as it moves from one community to another community. And that is not our problem. Our problem is they have something to start from.
Great. I think this might be for all of you in terms of how do you manage innovative pedagogies amidst challenges in your context? So, for example, the availability of resources. I don't know if anyone wants to unmute and answer that.
Yeah. Of course, play-based learning is materially intensive, but we try as much as possible to work with the materials that are available. And so some of them can be substituted for what is available. So, the people work with what is within their means. We don't insist on what they do not have. Otherwise, if we do that, then we cannot move forward. So basically, we contextualize to the materials which are available. We also look at the kind of goals and lessons that communities want their children to learn and infuse them within those games so that they pick on from there. Thank you.
And Lena or Dr. Safina Mutumba, do you have anything to add to that?
And I would just add on the question on, sorry, Professor Safina, you can come in, go ahead. Okay, maybe I'll come in and just say, building on what Professor Iju you're saying about contextualization, I think this is a key advocacy message too, because sometimes when we are advocating for play-based learning, it may look like a very kind of rigid fixed cost, expensive kind of approach, but even presenting it in that way to the policymakers, that it is more a principle and idea that will be applied relevant to each context, and therefore should not be seen as a new, expensive, and kind of intrusive approach, but one that will contextualize and bring in the desired results, even with the contextualization. Thank you.
Thank you. I think at this point, I'll hand it over to Joa.
Thanks, Jill. Thanks so much. What a great panel. And it's a pleasure for me to have the opportunity to moderate today's second panel. So I'm Joa Keys. I am the thematic lead on early learning for the GP Secretariat. And I will be moderating our second panel, which will go into more depth on the second theme from GP Synthesis Report, which is focusing on teacher training and professional development. So this panel is going to follow a similar structure as our previous panel. We'll have 3 short presentations followed by Q&A, depending on how much time we have. This specific panel is going to delve into a KIX project entitled Promoting Positive Early Learning Outcomes Through Strengthened Capacity and Learning Through Play, Evidence from Nigeria, the Gambia, and Kenya. And this project broadly had 3 overarching objectives. The first was to generate knowledge on context-based innovation levers and conditions for scaling learning through play approaches. The second was exploring how to strengthen capacities of teachers, parents, and other relevant stakeholders in the designing and implementing play-based approaches. And lastly, understanding how to better mobilize knowledge exchange to ensure that policy dialogue is informed by evidence to advance learning through play approaches at scale. So with that, it's my pleasure to introduce our first panelist, Given Daka, Regional Coordinator for the Africa Early Childhood Network, who will provide us with a summary of the main findings from this project. So Given, over to you.
Thank you, Joa. I will begin by saying that this project was underpinned by research, which aimed to understand the existing learning through play approaches and also identifying gaps, particularly with regards to teacher capacity. So the research that was undertaken did reveal teacher capacity gaps in learning through play. If we can just have the slide, please. So if you can move the slide. Hello? Right. So the research did show that there was limited integration of indigenous play, and that teacher professional development did not always focus on building skills, skills in play facilitation. And there was the whole issue around resources in the classroom, and gender biases and the limited adaptation of play materials for children with disabilities. Next slide, please. So with those identified capacity gaps, the 3 countries that were under this project, the Gambia, Nigeria, and Kenya, did develop a teacher professional development strategy. So for the Gambia, they enhanced the Go curriculum with play-based content and also strengthen the quality monitoring tools and approaches with the inclusion of learning through play content. Nigeria also focused on the teacher training model, developing a teacher training model that was inspired by the radio curriculum, which focused on building the capacity of teachers, educators, and the school support staff in terms of supporting the delivery of the curriculum. They also focused on the use of indigenous knowledge, gender, and the disability inclusion. What we also see in the case of Nigeria, they developed Play Activity Bank to support teachers' delivery of the curriculum. Coming to Kenya, Kenya focused on the integration of the learning through play approaches into the competency-based curriculum. If you could please move the slide to Kenya. Thank you. The integration of learning through play approaches into the competency-based curriculum. This also included provision of instructional materials such as children's play books and teacher guides, and also focused on the capacity building of teachers in terms of the competency-based curriculum and in the core development of materials, as well as inclusive instructional strategies to facilitate play-based learning. The issue of the gender equity and inclusion was also a consideration under this project. The gender equity and inclusion consideration was embedded throughout the whole design process. If you can move the slide, please. Was embedded through the design process, which looked at approaches for gender and disability inclusion in the delivery of learning through play curriculum. So frameworks and materials to guide the integration of gender. This included the development of frameworks and materials to guide the teacher in the integration of gender and disability inclusion. And the training package also emphasized the use of indigenous knowledge, gender and disability inclusion. Next slide, please. So lessons learned. What did we learn from the lessons? The three scalable models of learning through play undertaken in the Gambia, in Kenya, and Nigeria did show positive results in teacher capacity for integration of learning through play in the curriculum delivery. And I think the key elements that stand out across all the three countries is the focus on curriculum, ensuring that the curriculum is integrated with learning through play features, teacher resources, and competency building, particularly in terms of the play facilitation, and of course, teacher support and supervision. Also from this project, we draw some recommendations. A high-level engagement of government is critical to successful implementation and evidence-generated policy intake. We also see that linkages between research institutions and regional capacity building and knowledge exchange platforms is also very, very key. We've also drawn lessons, but also as a recommendation, the collaborative action across stakeholders is key in the success. For example, a consortium was formed to support learning through play models across these three countries. Thank you. Next slide, please. I think that's the slide just to thank you. So this was just a brief overview of this project. Thank you.
Given, thank you so much for your succinct overview of the findings from this project. I appreciate that attempting to summarize the finding from such robust research in 6 minutes is quite challenging. You did a fantastic job, and thank you so much for that. And hopefully we'll have an opportunity to delve more into this during the Q&A session. And I think that you touched on a really important point in your last slide on the importance of engaging government as a critical partner in policy uptake. And I hope we have the opportunity to delve into that maybe during the Q&A a bit more, but maybe that's a good segue to our second panelist, Mr. Lamine Jobe, Principal Education Officer for the Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education in the Gambia, who will now present how the ministry has used and scaled the EC teacher professional development innovations developed through KIX to inform their national strategy to scale play-based learning. So with that, Lamine, over to you. Yes, we see you, Lamine. You are now I think we have audio. Can we just check?
Hello.
Yes, you are good to go, Lamine. Please, the floor is yours.
Great. Yeah, with the Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education from the Gambia, we try to incorporate obviously consolidated into a policy brief for further policy guidance. And these products were obviously, they are enhanced model curriculum, which was obviously enhanced with more play-based activities for the teacher capacity strengthening. And we've also enhanced lesson presentation workbooks. We are also enhanced so that teachers will be able to use these presentations in their lessons across the schools that we are part of the project. We've also obviously developed a teacher lesson observation toolkit that will obviously follow how the curriculum is being, the play-based curriculum is being implemented in these schools across those used. We really try to use the Tayari model, which one of the pillars of the model is to strengthen parental engagement, to strengthen parental involvement in the activity of play-based learning in the schools and at home. So in doing that, obviously, communities and parents were capacitated to fully take part in the learning of their children, both at school and even at the house, because learning does not obviously expect that this continues. And we've also obviously really developed an age-appropriate play learning materials. These were also developed, and these were really the products that the research was able to obviously, which was generated from the research, and that the ministry tried to obviously leverage, which is obviously quite impactful. And then you could see also that has taken kind of a face of these products from phase one, that is enhanced goals curriculum, to lesson presentation workbooks, to developing a monitoring toolkit for teachers, how the curriculum is being implemented at the level of the classroom, so that we know what are the gaps for the trained teachers around those gaps. And then we obviously have some few recommendations, and that is the ministry is still very much committed to, with funding or with available funding, to obviously products across the whole country for much helpful. And then we also, the ministry with funding also will be able to develop, continue to develop and strengthen a regional and a national material, play-based material bank at regional level and at national level. So this will also be strengthened if funding is available. And then lastly, we obviously intend, with a partnership with the University of the Gambia, to obviously review the ECE curriculum, because that's where the entry point is for teacher training. So obviously, if the teacher training curriculum material is also being reviewed, that will obviously that will also be very much impactful. Like other speakers made mention of, yes, teachers will be talking about play-based, but in actual fact, how do you obviously conduct play-based at the level of school, at the level of the house, is all something that teachers need, their capacities need to be strengthened. These are obviously what the ministry is trying to work on with available funding. Thank you so much.
Well, I mean, thank you very much. You were even more succinct in your presentation. Very well done. Unfortunately, we had some connection issues, so we missed a few pieces, so hopefully we can come back to you during the Q&A. But thank you so much, Lane, for your intervention and really for sharing with us how research uptake has led to the development of this policy brief in the Gambia, and how these new teacher professional development models supporting learning through play have informed really the vision for scaling this approach in the Gambia effectively. So thank you again for that. Lastly, I'm very pleased to introduce Mr. Abdoulaye Jadama, head of the Department for the School of Education at the University of the Gambia, who will now provide us with his perspective on the role of national research institutions in supporting evidence generation and uptake and scaling of findings that emerge from this project in the Gambia. So with that, Abdoulaye, over to you.
Thanks so very much, Joy, and thanks to my colleagues, the previous speakers. Actually, this research project was a very interesting one. First and foremost, I would like to start with the research benefits that the research team's members have gained from our partners in the project, that is Nigeria and then Kenya. It has definitely widened our scope and understanding in terms of applied research, especially in the early years of learning, wherein we learn from each other and in terms of cooperation and seeing how best early childhood development, especially in the Gambia, which is a little bit peculiar in terms of research intervention, to making sure that curriculum intervention and integration of play-based learning is well tailored for the advancement of school readiness and school outcomes. That was very, very fundamental. Secondly, some of the fundamental insights that we were able to draw from this research were such that we undertake responsibility of reviewing the existing curriculums in the Gambia to understand the scope and magnitude of each of them, and therefore we were able to make recommendations as of how best the government can uptake this intervention that we have made in the GOLDS curriculum, as it is called the play-based GOLDS curriculum, which was tailor-made for the national curriculum to enhance school readiness and early learning in order to prepare a framework for school for a conducive and tolerable learning for all, despite the numerous challenges that are faced in the schools. But the government, through our policy brief and intervention and several presentations, they found it very interesting, and they are definitely willing to engage the partners and also engage the school leaders and community leaders to embrace this new GOLDS curriculum. Then coming to the third point that we found very interesting in this research was how best could we institutionalize this play-based curriculum into the adoption and implementation in the Gambia for a lifelong learning, sustainability of lifelong learning. This is something that has become very central, and so therefore we put in measures in terms of contextualizing and domesticating materials that could be used by teachers in their pedagogical development and skills in terms of lesson delivery and assessment, for them to be able to maintain the play-based learning, both the indoor and outdoor, were all something very much coherent and considered in terms of preparation and delivery of the lesson. Finally, but not the least, beside the institutionalization of this GOLDS curriculum, there were some few challenges that were noticed along the way, which were basically noticed among the teacher professional development in terms of the teacher gaps, which we felt that those could be as a result of both pre-service and in-service training in terms of the competence-based curriculum that the government is yearning for, how equipped these teachers are in terms of their preparedness in delivering these lessons. Those were some challenges that were noticed, and also how best could they be able to conduct assessments regardless of the level of the child and the position the child is found, even with regards to disabilities, has become a real challenge because they lack the skills and the ability to be able to conduct some of those ones. So therefore, we made some good recommendations to the government to further improve on the teacher professional development as an initiative to enhance learning through play, and therefore the lifelong learning that all the children needed would be something very substantive and will be definitely embedded in the school curriculum, and also become something very substantive for both the teachers and the communities to embrace and participate in making a school a enjoyable environment as well as home. So far, so good. Those were some of the recommendations and challenges we face in the research process, and it was definitely a very good one. Thank you so very much. We appreciate your insightfulness in this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abdullah. I think for really sharing some of your reflections and your engagement in this project and some of the lessons learned and the challenges. And I think really just reiterating, I think the importance of the engagement of national research institutions in this process. And I think really an integral role that they play in the work KIX does in supporting knowledge dissemination and uptake, both at country level, but also just through the regional hubs and informing global discourse. So thank you again for your inputs.
Thank you.
I think just listening to the different panelists and reflecting a little bit on what's been said and some of the challenges when we think about teacher professional development within the ECC context. I think the first thing that really comes to mind for me is, and we've heard this through different presentations today, is talking about, developing diverse and contextually relevant approaches. I think the ECC subsector is unique because when you look at, lower income and low and middle income countries, many of GPE's partner countries, you're looking at a very diverse range of service provision, public service provision, private, community-based, and the skill level and qualifications of the EC workforce in these different types of service provision is quite diverse. And so there's a need to adapt the training for professional development, especially continued professional development, accordingly. And so I think that really resonates with me in terms of how Gambia has really adapted a variety of different approaches to meet the diversified EC workforce that you engage with at country level. And I also think when we look at the EC subsector, and I've seen some of the comments in the chat here as well, talking about how do we advocate effectively for ECE? How do you mobilize interest if there's no political will? And I think, again, it's just so important that when we engage around these questions and ensure that ECCE is part of national policy dialogue, evidence is really the most important thing that's going to enable EC to be elevated into those discussions, whether it be for teacher professional development or any other aspect of ECE. I think that it's really important that we have this type of evidence, that it's brought up at the government level and informs policy dialogue. Without this kind of evidence produced through KIX and other partners, it's very challenging to ensure that we are able to advocate effectively for the inclusion of EC in national sector plans and ensure appropriate resource allocation, both domestically, but also through other means. So with that, I will transition. I think we have a bit of time for Q&A. And perhaps I'll just start with one quick question, for a follow-up question for you, Given, if possible. You'd mentioned in your presentation, you'd highlighted the importance of engaging with high levels of government in research implementation and evidence uptake. I'm just wondering if you could share with us what you feel are some of the most important steps that researchers can take in really fostering that strong engagement with the government and ensuring that the evidence that's developed by national institutions can really inform national EC policies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joa, for that question. I think in answering that question, there are several dimensions that we could look at. First of all, I think we have to inculcate the commitment from government from the very beginning of the research project. So government has to have a seat around that in terms of the beginning to identify what the research issue is that is to be investigated. I think we have to be with government on every step of the way. the research projects from its design and also in terms of the engagement or drawing of policy implications of coming out of that research. So we really need to see government as not only a consumer of knowledge, but also as a co-creator of the knowledge that comes from the evidence, from the research. One very important aspect is that the research must respond to the country's or government's priorities. So you talked about the link with policy, the policy sort of framework of government. So there has to be an alignment in terms of the project objectives of this research and government's priorities. So that is very, very important to ensure a more sustainable partnership with government, but also to enhance government uptake on what comes out of the research. Yeah, so I think those are the main points that I would really want to put across. Thank you.
Thank you, Given. Thank you very much. And I hope that some of these points are really transferable to other participants on today's today's webinar, to think about how I think these approaches can be adapted within different country contexts. We have still a bit more time for the Q&A, and thank you everybody for all the rich commentary and questions. It's just so great to see such a diverse group of participants from around the world engaging in today's webinar. Maybe, Lamine, a quick question for you. It'd be great to hear, we understand that within the broader policy dialogue for the education sector, sometimes elevating ECE is a challenge. I just would like to hear from you, how useful has it been to have this evidence and the development of this policy brief to enable you to effectively advocate for the inclusion of ECE in national policy dialogue and to mobilize more resources for the subsector?
Is it for me?
Yes, Lamine, please, over to you.
Yes, I think like what Given rightly said, involving government to be part of the whole process from the beginning to the end marks an important step and a milestone for the government to obviously know that this is one of its priorities, and this is one of the things that obviously will really help address one of those challenges that the government obviously is trying to address. And which in this research process, that was exactly what happened from the very process, the beginning up to the end. So obviously that is one of the reasons why we were able to consolidate the research products into a policy brief for further policy advocacy, so that the government can be able to get more funding in terms of resources in upscaling the research, which is really very much paramount. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lamine. I think that wraps up our second panel. So I'd like to really thank our three esteemed panelists for their participation in this rich exchange. It's been, I think, really valuable to kind of hear this tangible example of Gambia, to see how country-level research through KIX has really translated to policy advocacy work and informing the vision at scale for learning through play approaches within the ECC subsector in Gambia. So thank you all for your participation. I'd now love to hand over to Ian McPherson, who serves as the Global Lead for GPE's Knowledge Innovation Exchange, to provide some closing remarks for today's webinar. So with that, Ian, over to you to wrap us up today. Thanks.
Great. Thank you, Joa. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you're audible. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Terrific. Well, firstly, thank you to everybody who has joined, and particularly to our presenters and panelists. I'm not sure if, as participants, you're able to see how many people have joined, but at one point we were close to 600 people on this webinar, which I think is terrific. It's reflective, I think, of the strength of the community and of the importance of this kind of work to the ECE community. So a deep thanks to you all. Thank you also to ECDAN, to the Africa Early Childhood Network, to IDRC, and of course the LEGO Foundation. I would strongly commend the report that Elizabeth spoke to at the top of our webinar, the 5 different themes that were outlined, and also the recommendations. The report, I think, is very concise, it is very pithy, and it is deeply insightful. And of course, the presentations that we have heard today really help to provide some texture and color to the different recommendations and insights. So please do source the report. And in addition to that, and with thanks also to Sophie, who has been putting many links in the chat function, I would strongly encourage you to go to the gpekix.org website. And in addition to being able to access the report, as well as the different project information, in the top right, you will find a function to look at news, and you can click on that, and then you can subsequently search by topic. And if you search by the topic of early childhood education, not only will you be able to access the report, the different outputs from the different projects that have been supported through KIX, but also a lot of different information and activities that have been supported by GPE KIX on the theme of ECE, particularly the different regional hubs, and looking at where different participants who have joined today are coming from. There will be a lot of relevant insights and activities that we hope you would find very, very interesting. 2 final points before closing. Again, as Joa just said, the richness of the discussion in the chat function and the Q&A is enormous. And with deep thanks for not only asking your questions, but also to our panelists for answering those. There's a lot of content, there's a lot of insight being generated by this community. So I would encourage you to go through the chat and also through the Q&A process. My last input before closing is to say that there will be a second webinar focused on system strengthening and family and community engagement on the 21st of May. And as the outreach for this webinar you have all accessed, you will be informed soon about details for the second webinar, but please do mark it in your diaries, 21st of May. So with that, again, a deep thanks to all of our presenters, to our partners, to yourselves as participants, and certainly last but not least, the interpreters that make this kind of global convening and exchange of insights possible. Our deep thanks to you all. So with that, wishing you all success in your ongoing work and very good rest of your days. Thank you so much.